Hi everyone, Chris here from IELTS Advantage with another success story so that you guys can learn from other students' success and you can be successful yourself. So, Locke, introduce yourself to everyone, give a little bit of background information, please, so that we can start.
All right. Hi everybody. My name's Locke, and I come from Hong Kong. But I'm living in Auckland. When I moved to Auckland, I come here for further study in a master course of social work in the University of Auckland. And why I need to take the course or the IELTS test is that I need to get my social work qualification to be registered in the local social worker registration board. So they required all seven, in the IELTS test. So I have taken many times, and about more than 10 times of the test in Auckland. And before that, as I remember, just about 5 to 6 times in Hong Kong. So the main problem falls into the writing test. Actually, I've got more than 8 in listening, reading, and about speaking. Yeah, speaking about 8 or 7.5. But for writing, I always got about 6, 5.5, and I have no idea. I have no idea about what problems with that. Yeah, and everyone told me that, well, you've got so high marks in reading and listening. You will be able to get more than 7 or at least 7 in writing. So I was just going to find out what problem in my writing, and that's why I took the course with Chris. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very, very common situation where someone gets very high marks for reading and listening, then a little bit lower for speaking normally, but normally writing is much, much lower. In my experience, it's not unusual for students to have 2 bands or 1.5 bands between their reading and listening and their writing. And a lot of people get very frustrated with that. But there's a couple of very obvious reasons why that is. So if anyone's watching and they're getting frustrated with that, number one, those are skills. So think about the number of the number of hours that you've spent in the past reading and listening versus the number of hours you've spent writing. It's probably like 10, 20, 50 times more what you've been reading in English versus writing in English. People just don't write that often in English. So that's one reason. The other reason is to do with vocabulary. Your passive vocabulary, which you're using for reading and listening, is always much, 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 much bigger than your active vocabulary, the vocabulary that you can use and produce when you're speaking and writing. So that's very important for people to realize, because many people give up because of that. They're like, oh, why are my scores not all the same? But when you actually look at it, then there are very obvious reasons for that. Did you get frustrated yourself with that?
Yes, referring to what you said about how many hours you use it for listening and reading. In my own experience, after I moved to Auckland, actually compared to Hong Kong situation, I I use it to speak English, read English, or listen to English every day.
Mm-hmm.
Not specifically to the IELTS test, but in
Mm-hmm.
everyday living, you talk to others in Auckland. Yeah, they speak English. So I agree that I've already spent a lot of time on listening and reading on everyday life, but not the practical tests of IELTS.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the writing? You need to write in the format of IELTS that required. So what is the format you need to clarify? Yeah, because in my working experience, I'm a social worker, and most likely I need to write a lot of case reports, but
Mm-hmm.
not essay.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea about what IELTS writing needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
even the things that you will learn in IELTS writing will be useful when you're writing reports as a social worker.
Yeah.
So for example, very small things like introducing what you're going to talk about to make it easy for the person to understand what you're writing about, topic sentences at the beginning of paragraphs, explanations, examples. Examples in your case will be real things. It could be, a real incident or a real person that you're talking about. But all of those principles that you learn can be applied to real life situations, especially someone like you, because you'll get a lot of people like doctors, nurses, engineers, and they're like, why do I have to learn this? Is it, well, these are very basic communication skills. Being able to clearly write down something and communicate with someone through the written word. So it is useful when you do migrate to a new country and start your new job there. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Before that, or before I took the IELTS writing practice, I thought that's okay for my case report because I've written for many years. But after that, I find it very useful, especially for the thinking, for the
Mm-hmm.
method of thinking, because it always use that you need to tell about the cause and then the effect, and then how this effect generate another effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a series of thinking method, not
Mm-hmm.
just the writing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what it changed my mind about
Mm-hmm.
writing tests.
Yeah, and very few people are trained to write things clearly. So before I was, a long time ago, before I was a teacher, I trained as a lawyer, and part of the program that they put us through, part of the program was called legal writing,
Yeah,
but really it was just about how to write clearly, because they said they said if you start this job, you have to be able to communicate clearly. And all the lawyers, very educated people that had been, writing essays and stuff in university, they all said, "Oh, I know how to write," and the failure rate was like 50%. It was like everybody was failing because they said, "Just no."
yeah,
It's not a common thing for someone to naturally be really good at writing,
yeah,
especially just writing clearly, which is something that obviously lawyers or social workers, but also just everybody in their day-to-day lives
yeah,
has to do, even if it's just a simple email.
yeah,
So what would you say, let's focus on writing because that was the thing that you struggled with the most. What would
yeah.
you say were the key differences between you getting a 5.5 and you got a 7 or 7.5 in writing?
Seven,
Seven.
seven.
What,
I hope
what,
7.5.
well, you don't need to waste your time going higher than you really
Yeah,
need to. So, and I'm sure in the future you'll be able to get that. So 5.5 to 7 is huge. Like 6.5 to 7 is huge, but 5.5 to 7 is
yeah,
massive. What
yeah.
would you say were the key differences between failing and getting the score you need?
Yeah. First of all, I would say is your logical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because before you trained up your English writing or your command of English, what you think is the most important because um, you have a basic idea and then you need to use your own English to write it onto the test paper. But you need to firstly train up your thinking skills, how to make it logical,
Mm-hmm.
how to clearly explain your idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may have many ideas, but how can you choose one
Mm-hmm.
to be explained in your test? This is very, very important. And the second one, I think, is the format. As I said, is the format the IELTS needs because for the essay, I would say 4 paragraphs format. This is really, really important because I would say many of my friends feels, oh, I have many ideas. So that, write first paragraph, second paragraph, fourth paragraph, many paragraphs, and over the 400 words.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just wastes your time. It
Mm-hmm.
just wastes your time. So the format of an essay for the different types of question that is really important. You need to get to familiar with different question types, such as discuss both sides view, how to approach it, what is the cause and solutions. You need to approach different question types.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, that is the most important things. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll just touch on some of those points. So you're talking about thinking, and I often say that the IELTS test is as much a thinking test as it is a writing test or a speaking test or a reading test or a listening test. And especially for writing, as I said many times on the course, your writing is a reflection of your thinking.
Yes.
So if you go into the test totally confused about what to do or completely misled about what to do by someone teaching you who doesn't really know what they're doing, then you're going to struggle. Especially, what really gets students into trouble is when they follow like 6 or 7 different methods, and they're totally confused about what to do, and they overcomplicate everything as well. And then because what's in their head is a mess,
Yeah.
what's on the paper is a mess too. So being very clear about what you need to do and thinking clearly and logically about the question and putting it on paper. And again, that's a very useful skill for the future, being able to think clearly about things. You also talked about limiting the number of ideas in your essay, which is crucial as well. Not that writing lots and lots of ideas isn't a bad thing per se. It's because if you write lots of ideas, 2 things are going to happen. Number one, you're probably not going to develop those ideas, and you're going to go off on a tangent. You might not answer the question, but also you mentioned people writing like 400 words or over 400 words. You're not giving yourself enough time to think about the question at the beginning and then at the end edit your writing to make sure that you're minimizing the number of vocabulary and grammar mistakes, because grammar and vocabulary 50% of your test. If you're typing away or writing away 400 words, there's no way that you're not making
Yeah, or in my words, many you write, many errors you got.
Yeah. I mean, if you have an error in every single sentence or multiple errors in every sentence, you're never going to get a 7. It's just as simple as that. Because your vocabulary and grammar are going to be quite low. It could also lower your coherence score because it's just clear to the examiner what you're really saying. So, I mean, it always is really interesting to talk to students in these success stories, because every single time there's just a few things that they needed to tweak, they needed to fix, and it moves them up dramatically. So you go from a student who is like, "Oh, I hate this test. I don't know. To someone who's like, "Oh, I just fixed this, and this," and then everything gets better. And that's, I've never met a student who we couldn't identify, most students 3 or 4 key things that if they improve that, then they're going to move up. So it's great to meet yet another success story that applies to. Anything else? Any last tips or anything that you would tell students?
Well, yes. I would say be brilliant, or be brilliant with the marking criteria of the writing test. Yeah, before taking any action or before making any changes you are planning to, you need to very familiar with the marking criteria, because as Chris said, for example, task response and the coherence is something not very related to English in my own experience. It's just a matter of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot clearly explain your idea, you will lose many marks in the task response and coherence at the very beginning. So in my own strategy, I pay many efforts on improving my task response and coherence.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, because I have not many times on improving my vocabulary or grammar. So I just keep it in about 6 or something, and then you can derive your scores or calculate approximately what scores you will get. If you can improve high marks in task response and coherence, and then your final score will be boosted. So that's what I did.
I think actually I would agree that you need to improve your coherence and cohesion and your task response. I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself when it comes to vocabulary and grammar. I think you probably did quite well for vocabulary and grammar, but the strange thing is that often when students improve their task response and their coherence and cohesion through knowing what they need to do, their grammar and vocabulary improves also, because they're able to clearly think about what they're doing, plan everything out, focus on writing, then have time at the end to edit their grammar and vocabulary mistakes, and that improves everything. And so I would agree with you there, and I think that's really great advice to give to any student. So, yeah, any last minute things before we finish, or you don't have to think of it anything, if you know.
Yeah. Good luck, and don't tend to memorize some vocabulary.
No.
Don't to memorize some phrases because it's not useful.
No, it's not a memorization test. It's an English test. You're not going to do well through, even though it's very tempting. It would be amazing if you could get a list of words and just memorize the words. I wish that were true, but it's not. You're never going to be able to do that, even though 90% of students do that. So if you're watching this, all of my success stories agree with this. You can't memorize stuff. You can't memorize examples or explanations or vocabulary or structures or anything like that. You have to understand and apply what you've learned first. And that's amazing.
And be flexible to use your own synonyms.
Of course. Yeah, of course. You need flexibility because you can't apply someone else's work to a unique question. And it's as simple as that. Again, I wish there were a shortcut or an easy way, but like everything else, there's not. So that's great, Locke. Thank you for confirming lots of the things that I teach my students. And congratulations on getting the score you need. And hopefully this means you can help a lot of people in New Zealand with
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully. I was there many years ago. It's a wonderful place. Will you stay in Auckland, or are you going to move anywhere else?
Well, I will firstly finish my thesis in the last year of my study, and then I will plan the following step.
Try to go to have you been to the South Island? It's amazing. It's Queenstown and Queenstown. Yeah, amazing.
Maybe the following Christmas,
Yeah, excellent. Well, Locke, thank you very much again. And if you need anything in the future, just feel free to get in touch. All right?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Locke. Bye-bye.
Bye.